So a guy reaches out to me, let's call him George, and he's having problems lasting in bed. He's finishing within a minute or so. He can't quite hit his stride when he has sex with his girlfriend. And that's a common problem that I often talk about on this channel, early ejaculation. The same thing happened with George's previous girlfriends, but he's really stressed about it now, hence coming to see me. I ask him why now, and there were two reasons. The relationship he's in is fantastic, and this girl is a keeper, but he's afraid he won't be enough for her sexually. And the other thing that's stressing him out, he plucked up the courage to speak with his doctor. And the doctor asked him about his general health, his relationship situation, his sexual history, how long he'd experienced premature ejaculation for. And then his doctor asked what his sexual orientation was. I'm straight, George said. I have a girlfriend. Okay, so you don't have sex with men or fantasize about sex with men, said the doctor. No, George said. Okay, just checking, said the doctor, as that can sometimes underlie problems such as this. That planted a new worry in George's mind, and he had enough worries already. What if his body, his ejaculation reflex, is trying to tell him something? What if his doctor has sensed something about him? George asked me whether his sexual subconscious was trying to get the job done quickly, maybe because he's actually gay, but he doesn't realise it. That's quite a leap. I'm not blaming the doctor because they were valid, sensible questions. And in fact, NHS guidelines recommend that health professionals and GPs do ask about sexual orientation if the patient is over 16. It's useful information because in this situation, when someone goes to see a doctor with sexual problems or relationship problems, the doctor shouldn't just assume that they're straight. George's GP said he probably had performance anxiety and suggested some relaxation techniques. He said they could try medication if there wasn't any improvement. Perfectly sensible. And I think the doctor nailed it, actually. It just might have been something in the "do you like men" question, or something in the way that George heard it. Something that set George's mind off making these connections, generating more worry and stress for George, and then more of a problem in bed. PE is usually experienced in these kinds of loops. Now, doubts about sexuality are common. I sometimes talk with clients about their sexual orientation, and doubts might be completely legitimate, of course. Or it can be obsessive, so-called HOCD, homosexual OCD, or SOOCD, sexual orientation OCD. Getting fixated on, am I gay, am I straight? Analysing all our interactions, looking for any evidence that we might be living a lie, etc. This is quite a common form of OCD, actually, and it can be difficult to get a handle on. But that wasn't the case here with George. He hasn't reached that point of OCD-like obsession over this, fortunately for him. But there's a whole ball of stress forming here. And it's all around how long he lasts in bed, and it's pulling in other doubts and insecurities. So, a question for anyone wondering about their sexuality, and there are no right answers to this, of course. It's called the beach test. And I got this from Dan Savage originally, I think. When you're at the beach, on a beautiful day, and people are walking up and down in their swimwear, and you're surrounded by bodies, who catches your eye? Men, women, both? Who do you feel drawn to look towards, rather than who do you think you should be looking at? Because we already have our answer, but I run the beach test past George anyway, and he looks at women. He doesn't look at men, or fantasize about men, sexually or romantically. He looks at his girlfriend too. He is aroused by her, he is drawn to her. That's why he wants to have longer lasting sexual intercourse with her. George is a heterosexual man experiencing early ejaculation. There will be reasons for this, but he's not coming quickly to get it over and done with because he's secretly gay. Now, it's estimated that 30% of men experience PE. It's the most common sexual dysfunction, closely followed by ED, erection difficulties. Straight and gay and bisexual men and pansexual men, they can all experience PE and all ED. For the vast majority of them, it's nothing to do with their sexual orientation. Now, when guys are struggling with their sexuality, having legitimate doubts, they might experience arousal and desire issues, yes, but they will be experiencing other things too. the fantasies, desires, same-sex attraction, and they have probably been aware of this for some time. The beach test can tell us something. Now, some people never really experience such doubts. Some go through a phase, maybe during adolescence or as a young adult. And some people are still figuring out their sexuality. That's all fine. And that figuring out can be really difficult, especially if we live in a culture or a family where there's prejudice or shame around being LGBTQ. Seeking some counselling and support makes sense here. Now, for people with OCD-like struggles around their sexuality, doing the beach test probably isn't enough to put their minds at rest. There's work to be done about how they respond to intrusive thoughts that keep on reoccurring. But the beach test is useful for reality checking the kind of worries that George was having. Coming a bit quickly with a female partner is not in itself an indicator that you're gay or that you're meant to be gay. That is overthinking it. That's what we call a cognitive distortion. George isn't the first guy to worry that his PE might mean he's gay. I've heard it before. And unchecked and unchallenged, this misconception will confuse and exacerbate the problem. And it's just the kind of scenario that dodgy conversion therapists, moralizers will exploit too. Don't get me started on that. If you're struggling with PE, see my other resources for relaxation and building up your sexual skills. Because George did this stuff, he found it helpful, and he just needed some more sex-specific guidance than what his doctor was able to provide on that day. And if you're experiencing sexuality doubts or HOCD, I'll put a couple of resources in the description, because these are quite distinct scenarios. So I'll give some kind of signposts there. I hope that's helped clear things up a bit, and thanks to George for letting me share his story. And thank you too for watching.